You're listening to 91.1 KLSU. You're listening to the news show. It's 3 o'clock, and it's our last one of the semester, sadly. But we do have a very special guest in the building. We got Jayden Bowman, past student body president. How you doing, Mr. President?
I'm doing pretty good.
Yeah. Jayden opened us up. My first show I ever did as a news director, he opened us up this semester. So it's very full circle to have him here for the last one. I really appreciate it. I'm also here with Lucia.
Hello and good afternoon.
Yes, yes. So let's get right into it. You were the student body president for the 2021-2022 school year, and just last week you ended your term, correct?
Yes, I finished out on Friday with the ROTC military ball. That was the last event I had as student body president.
Wow, a ball. That's fun. Did you like all three-piece suited out, or?
Yep, I did 3-piece suit, and then when I got there, they told me, "Oh, Jayden, we want you to say some words," and I said, "Oh." I didn't prepare anything, but I spoke from my heart, and it ended up being very nice. But it was a nice dinner, nice ball, and we proudly supported them in paying for the event. So
Yeah. Oh,
got to
wow,
be there.
that's good. Yeah, and the last times you've been on, we kind of talked about policies and like that. But with it being your senior year and you're about to graduate, I think it'd be really cool to just talk about you as a person. To have you going out. So, what was a personal lesson you learned during your time as student body president?
I think one of the biggest personal lessons I learned from this experience is the investment and belief in people. People are oddly imperfect, but in that they are perfect, and it's a beautiful thing. This position has really made me see the 34,000 students of our campus and then the 44,000 of our system across the state as a whole as 44,000 individuals that have the potential to go out and do whatever they want to do after they leave this place, after they graduate. They go out into the world and do great things, and that is what LSU kind of taught me. It's just that people are so cool in their own way, and because of that, and because of their passions, and because of what they love to do and what their heart desires, they go out and do great things.
Right.
So
I'm sure that's like, once you start to be student body president, you have to hear a lot of people's say, like, everything that is going on, it falls on you. So you kind of have to be susceptible to all of that talk and to all of the criticism, constructive or not. But that's probably that would have been a hard lesson for me to learn, because at first I probably would have been like, that's just a lot of people just saying a lot of things.
Exactly.
But for you to be like, no, like, I'm in this leadership position, so it's on me to heed all of this and find the individuality. That's kind of a beautiful thing to come out of leadership.
and care about it, because part of your job is to just care about the people and all of their opinions that they are bringing you, and whether you believe in that or not, your job is to service them and to serve them and to hear them for what they're saying. And so because of that, again, it's a hard lesson, yes, because you're like, I gotta care about something that I don't even know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But that's my job, and that was the job, and so.
Has
Great
this
lesson.
job kind of, in being in that leadership position, having to heed all these people, has that kind of changed how you look at your future outside of LSU, or has that like kind of more fine-tuned what you want to do?
I think it changed. It changed it a lot. I used to want to be a lawyer. I was going to go to law school, but then I started realizing I wanted to be more so in the political positions of law, so like a district attorney or attorney general and things like that. And then I took a class called Sociology of Law. Hated it.
Yeah.
Loved the professor and loved the class itself, but just ended up realizing that I do not like the law or studying it. It's too slow. It's very reactive, and I realized through being student body president that I'm more of a proactive person. I like to look at what's going to happen, look at it, look at the layout of all of it, and looking like maybe we can forecast and see what possibly we'll do. I'm a sociology major, and so I like to look at people and be like, because of their patterns and things, what can we predict will happen?
Right.
You can do the same thing when it comes down to economics, because economics is a social science. You can do the same thing with budgeting, like you can forecast it. And so because of that, I realized that I'm a very proactive person in that regard, and it redirected me towards public administration. So now I want to get my master's in public admin, and then after that, go more so into politics and healthcare.
Oh, wow. I also have taken a law class here. I want to be a lawyer. I want to be an entertainment lawyer right now. And so when I first took that media law class, it's really in like what I want to study. It's libel, all those things. I kind of had the opposite experience where I did not like the professor, but I liked the topic of it. But law is very reactive. That's kind of like why when you talk to a lawyer about a case, if any of you have, kind of say, oh, it's circumstantial. It depends on the circumstances. You know, it's all very reactive. And to have to live in a way of your profession is to react to things, that's high stress. I'm sure you know that.
Exactly.
And even on radio, you have to react to a lot of things, and it can be a little, I like it, you know, I kind of thrive in that, okay, we got to figure this out. But it can definitely be very intimidating at the top. But you mentioned your master's. Do you want to stay in Louisiana for that?
Yeah, I'm gonna do it here at LSU.
Oh, wow.
So I'll be here for another year. In just a student capacity.
Oh, wow, okay.
It's very exciting for me.
How you feel about taking that back seat?
Great. It's great to be able to just calm down. It's great to be able to reflect and apply everything. I think that's been like the coolest thing. It's like after I got done, now I'm able to apply and reflect upon all the messages not messages, but like all the teachings and things I've learned from it and like apply it to like my life and moving forward as I go through leadership or go through life in general.
Yeah.
We do kind of have like a two-part question for you, if you will. We are curious about like what your proudest accomplishments are from either your tenure or your college career, you know, if you want to get into that too. And then also like what are the things that you wish you had accomplished?
Yeah, okay. So my proudest accomplishment would have definitely been our State of the Student Body Address. And in that same regard, that's something I would have wanted to work on more. So I kind of use it as an accomplishment that is also like kind of not an accomplishment. In the sense of we did it, could have marketed it a lot better, and we were kind of reactive to it because had to change the day. I think we had like bad weather. Remember, we got out a lot of days of school in March for different storms and things, and so we kind of
that didn't even hit, honestly.
Exactly. So we ended up marketing it a little bit bad, and so like it didn't get out as much, but it was still a proud accomplishment because it was the first time that we had took the step or kind of action to let the student body know what we've been doing. And so in that we let everybody know how much money we had given out to student organizations at that time, something we're very proud of. We worked very much with Black Student Union this year and supported them financially in a lot of events, but also supported them in a holistic sense of going to their events and being like a part of them in a sense. And so I love working with Cody and all of them. But we could have definitely did a better job of like just putting it out there and broadcasting it more because it was about the transparency. The students always ask, what is student government doing?
Absolutely.
And there were some things we were doing. I'm not a big social media guy, so therefore it's hard to sometimes be like, well, I know Jayden's busy because he's going here and going there, but you might not know exactly what I'm doing. And so in that, I was always advocating, always doing my job to students and always supporting students and representing LSU the best I could. But in that, just would have liked to have been more transparent in the sense of I should have trusted social media a little bit more in the sense of how do I communicate with students and how do they know what we're doing
but it takes you to try it first,
Exactly.
you know, and then you can kind of be like, okay, we should have fine-tuned here, this was a lacking point. But most of the time, it's just about doing it. Like, even coming to LSU, being a student, trying to get into other things, you really have to try things out first before you can say whether it's good or bad, you know? And that's very hard to actually do, but I'm sure running for a student body president, you kind of just had to throw it out there and see what sticks, and then you can fine-tune as you go.
I think that theme of like communication also was definitely reflected by the next campaigns that came in, because we asked them all the same question, but like a lot of them were like, we really want to like communicate with the student body more, we want to communicate with student media more. So they definitely started something at least that to be like continued later on.
In your first show here, you talked about like, I'm here to be transparent, I'm here for transparency and to bridge the gap between students and student government and faculty. So it's really cool that like even the the people that come after you, they're taking that from you, you know, and that's really a mark that you've left on campus.
And that was it, because my whole, and the thing is, they took my definition of transparency, then they applied it to a bigger sense. Because my sense was in the sense of, if you ask me a question, I would never lie. So that's what I thought transparency was. And so that was what I was doing. I was more so being like, I'll never hide anything that I'm doing at all. If you ask me, I would gladly tell you. And then now the next campaigns that were coming after were like, okay, now we want to show the students a lot more what we're doing. We know that you don't mind saying what we're doing.
Yeah.
But we just like, we gotta show it more. And so I was like, yes, that is. So that's what transparency, that is a calling of transparency. And I was like, that's what they did. Like, that's a better transparency. And so just in that, like, I just really learned even more of what transparency is and what it can be.
Yeah. So with all these accomplishments, you know, we see, even if it's not as out there as you think it is, what is your fondest LSU memory in any capacity?
Lord. So I've had a lot of them, but I've only cried twice, like, because of something that I felt from LSU. One, I would say the first time was the first home game after COVID. Well, not really after COVID, but so like last semester.
Yeah.
The stadium was open. The game, everybody could go. I was with my best friends. They were on the field with me. And I just remember, I just felt the pride of LSU, and I was like, we're gonna do okay this year. I was like, we're gonna be on the incline. I think LSU's ready just for more. And I felt that in that moment, and I saw it in the student body from the cheering and from the excitement after a long year of just
Uncertainty,
long years of fighting for racial justice, a lot of years fighting for sexual assault, equality, and fighting for equity and trying to fix gaps and all of that. It was so draining. And we're not done. By any means, we're not done. But I believe we're going in a great place. And that game it brought it out of me.
Yeah.
Second thing, I would say it was November or October. It was a black faculty staff. No, I'm sorry. It was the AP Thoreau Black Alumni chapter. And they had a dinner. And I was invited to the dinner. And their guest speaker was the Commissioner of Higher Education, who I had worked with a lot of times before this by being student body president. But there was so many black and successful LSU alumni. And that event made me tear up just because I was like, yeah, I can do anything I want to do. I really can leave this place and go wherever I want to go, do whatever I want to do. Because sometimes you get your degree and you feel like you're kind of stuck at LSU, or you're not hitting the right marker,
or what do I even do?
The right job and things. And like my friend Preston, he's like got a job in New York. Don't know what Preston's going to be doing, but he uses degrees, and he uses degree, and he used what he learned here at LSU to go where he wanted to go. And so that event and my friends and things just always remind me of, like, you can do whatever you want to do, no matter your color, no matter where you come from, no matter your belief, no matter who you love, you can do whatever you want to do, and there is nobody stopping you. Or people will try, but nobody can.
Yeah, absolutely. That's beautiful, you know, and you've encompassed it, you know, for other people seeing your presidential run. And I just want to thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you for opening us up and closing us out, and always being open and coming on, making time for us, you know. I wish you nothing but luck as you go on. I know everything that you want to happen will happen, you know, and if you ever want to come visit us at the station, you're more than welcome. But we're going to take a quick break. You got any parting words for us, Jayden?
It's been a pleasure being here on the show. The times I was here and was able to make it. All to all the students out there, y'all rock. Love purple, live gold, forever LSU, and go Tigers.
There you go. And we're going to take a quick break with some Azalea Banks. We'll be right back. Stories. Bid to buy Twitter. But before this, he was in the news for a California lawsuit filed against him. In February, California regulators sued Tesla Incorporated, alleging the car manufacturer has been discriminating against black employees at the San Francisco Bay Area factory. The lawsuit filed by California's Department of Fair Employment and Housing alleges Musk told workers to be, quote, thick-skinned about racial harassment. Allegedly, the N-word was used against black employees and other racist language was used in the factory, including likening workers to porch monkeys and hood rats and suggesting that they go back to Africa. In addition, the lawsuit states Tesla segregated black workers into separate areas of the factory. It was called the porch monkey stations, the dark side, the slave ship, and the plantation. Tesla responded to these allegations in a statement saying, quote, over the past 5 years, the DFEH has been asked on almost 50 occasions by individuals who believed they were discriminated against or harassed to investigate Tesla. On every single occasion when the DFEH closed an investigation, it did not find misconduct against Tesla. It therefore strains credibility for the agency to now allege, after a 3-year investigation, that systemic racial discrimination and harassment somehow existed at Tesla. A narrative spun by the DFEH and a handful of plaintiffs' firms to generate publicity, not factual proof. The DFAEH director, Kevin Kish, said the lawsuit is the largest ever brought by the state for racial discrimination in terms of the size of that affected workforce since the agency gained power to prosecute in 2013. This is not the first time the company has been into hot water. In 2017, the California civil rights law group, a Bay Area firm, filed a class action lawsuit against Tesla representing 1,000 black workers, with 100 of them making claims against the DFEH lawsuit. The lawsuit is still in court, and last October, in more news, a federal jury awarded $137 million in damages to a former black elevator operator who had alleged he faced daily racial slurs and other forms of harassment while working at the Fremont plant in 2015 and 2016 before quitting. Tesla is appealing the verdict and has denied any knowledge of racist conduct against the former operator. At least 160 worker lawsuits have been filed against Tesla since 2006. But the recent news of why Elon Musk is in the media circle is because he wants to buy Twitter. Musk is set up to buy Twitter for $44 billion and make the website private. Musk has shared ideas about free speech, fighting spam, and opening up the, quote, black box of artificial intelligence that creates your social media experience. Musk has stated his first priority is to make Twitter a politically neutral digital town square that allows just as much free speech as the U.S. Constitution. Musk's other interest is in AI. He has made the promise to, quote, make the algorithm open space to increase trust. So he wants to open up the systems that rank content and decide what shows up. And Musk's broader goal is to help people find out why their tweets get promoted or demoted and whether human moderators or automated systems are making those choices. So that's a lot.
It's a lot.
Yeah. For the past week, we always ask, what are we going to talk about on the show? And we were talking about Elon Musk, well, Twitter. People were just talking about Twitter here. And when we were bringing up this lawsuit, people really didn't know that he is facing this lawsuit and that he has had to face other lawsuits for discriminatory practices. And he has, the company has said that this did not happen. And like I said in their statement, they said that the DFEH has looked into about 50 cases and found nothing. But this is the quite the number of cases against them right now.
It is. It's like it's 100 people involved at minimum. And it's like, what are the chances of all of them lying and making it up?
But we never
together?
know.
We don't know. I think that's what I like about the news show so much is, bringing to light things that are going unreported in mainstream media, especially as, he's just getting talked about daily ad nauseum.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it's I think that when we are looking at somebody who wants to make this company private, because right now Twitter is a public company, because he's approved for that $44 billion, but he hasn't actually done it yet. But once that happens, we should look into the history of companies. And so the firm that is filing that lawsuit against Tesla, they've said that, his move to Texas during the pandemic was tied to this, but Tesla says that it was tied to the fact that California wanted to shut down the factory. So it's a lot of back and forth with what is going on, but it is concerning, definitely. But until all the facts of the case show up, and until we know what is true, what is false, all we know is that there are very similar links in all of these cases that are against Tesla.
Yes. On to more local news. There has been an unprecedented spike in sex crimes in the Baton Rouge area in recent days. This past Wednesday, Austin Sire, 22, turns himself into the St. Tammany Parish Sheriff's Office after learning of the warrant for his arrest issued earlier this month. Sire allegedly began masturbating in his vehicle while watching a woman that had pulled into an adjacent parking spot. The previous Tuesday evening, Thomas Beal, 37, was arrested in a separate incident after another woman called to report a naked man sitting in his vehicle and masturbating in a public parking lot. Finally, on Thursday the 21st of April, Travis Mannett, 42, was arrested after a passerby flagged down a patrolling deputy to notify the deputy of Mannett masturbating in his vehicle. Mannett confessed when confronted by deputies and was taken into custody. All three men were booked into the St. Tammany Parish Correctional Center for obscenity. A man who was also arrested last Tuesday for taking photos of a woman changing in a Target dressing room. The victim said she asked the person, 42-year-old John Locascio, that what they were doing and got no response from him. Employees pulled surveillance video facing the dressing rooms and said Locascio stopped by the dressing rooms 4 times and got down on one knee next to the door. On Tuesday, Locascio turned himself into authorities and told deputies he was, quote, trying to take pictures of the floor to see if someone needed help. It was a lot to read all those news stories coming out like day after day after day. And usually like we don't really report that often on like petty crimes, smaller crimes like that, but it is this weird spike, like I mentioned in the beginning, is a lot.
Yeah, so for those who don't know, we do 3 news updates a day right now. And for our updates, we have to see what stories we're going to talk about. And usually we do not talk about, killings or shootings, murder, because they aren't really stories that are like tailored to a person. If it's a very specific shooting or something happened at a school, we'll talk about it. But with cases like this, it really doesn't usually make sense to do them on an update. But we have been noticing that there's been a huge uptick in these things happening. That girl got kidnapped in the parking lot. And there's just been the police and like Mayor Sharon Reston Broom have been talking about the crime going on in Baton Rouge. We've been talking about state police for months and months and months now, but there is an issue going on, and I know that the police have said multiple times about like what they want to do to address this, but it's definitely something to be on the lookout for.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Also in state news, because this is our last show this semester, we wanted to do kind of like a recap, and I was really interested in doing a recap of the biggest legislation pieces that were passed this semester. There were many notable ones. I'm going to focus on 4. In early March, Governor John Bel Edwards announced his veto of the state redistricting map drawn by the Louisiana legislator. His office said Edwards used his veto power, quote, because it does not add a second majority and minority district and runs afoul of federal law. The governor stated out of the 163 total districts created by the legislature in the various bills passed, not a single additional majority and minority district was created, despite the fact that the percentage of the black population increased and the white population decreased. On March 30th, the Republican-controlled legislature overrode the veto of the Democratic governor. The new map was not noticeably different from the previous district lines, which allowed for 5 Republican-dominant seats and only 1 for Democrats. Edwards and his fellow Democrats had advocated for a second majority-minority seat due to the black population of Louisiana growing up to 33%. Yes, the next piece is about the teacher pay raise, which I did a quick update about earlier on. Also in early March, the Louisiana State Board of Elementary and Secondary Education, or the BESE, approved the Minimum Foundation Program formula for the 2022-23 school year. This would sustain the current level of state spending for education while still including a raise of $1,500 for certified teachers and $750 for non-certified school support staff. This reflected the push that Governor Edwards proposed in his 2022-23 executive budget. More recently, there was a legislative debate between landlords and disabled tenants. In early April, Republicans in a Louisiana House committee voted along party lines to support landlords over the disabled who wanted out of their leases because they claimed to be no longer able to use or access their apartments. Representative Mandy Landry told the majority members of the House Civil Law and Procedure Committee following the 3-11 vote that rejected House Bill 257, quote, "You did just vote against the disability community." The measure would have allowed tenants who were unable to get out of their leases because of a disability to file a lawsuit in small claims municipal or parish courts, rather than in federal district court, which enforces the Fair Housing Act. Landry said having access to smaller courts would have allowed easier and fair resolution for tenants. She added that pursuing litigation in federal courts is an expensive proposition. Our final legislative recap is going to be on the Transgender Athlete Ban, which has been in national news even. Bans on transgender athletes have been spreading across numerous U.S. states, with Louisiana being one of the more recent. Legislation intended to keep transgender athletes in Louisiana from competing on college and K-12 women's and girls sports teams has been approved by the state Senate. The bill by Republican Senator Beth Mizell of Franklinton passed in April on a vote of 29-6. It goes next to the state house. Democratic Governor John Bel Edwards vetoed similar legislation last year, saying it was mean-spirited, unnecessary, and could result in a loss of NCAA events in the state. Opponents of the bill said there are no known transgender athletes currently competing in the state. They said it adds to discrimination against an already marginalized group. Yeah, so those were 4 pieces that we either did updates about or talked about in a show.
That disability one, we didn't really get to do a lot of talking on that.
I think I just did an update on it. Not much is being said about that one specifically. I think there aren't very many advocates for disabled people in the state currently who are really trying to be loud about it. Really the only hope for that one now, getting it passed or getting it approved, would be just to campaign on it again and keep talking about it.
Right. So the 4 ones that we talked about is teacher pay, disability, transgender, and
also the redistricting. So they overrode Edwards' veto. So according to the census, the 2020 U.S. Census, the black population in Louisiana grew. It's now 33% of the state, a third. And yet the majority minority seat would mean that it's a district in which black people is the majority in that district. And another one was not added, despite the growing population like we mentioned.
Yes. But that's been an issue throughout the country, throughout the South especially. We did a story, I think it was late February, early March, about what is redistricting, what is gerrymandering, because when these stories are talked about in media, it's assumed that people know what that is and how redistricting happens and what the course of action with it is. But it all truly depends on the population in the state, and also the governor and their choice in what redistricting is, who gets redistricted, where these lines are drawn. So yeah, there was a lot in the legislature this year. We didn't get to talk about all of it at all, but throughout the semester we've had people on talking about what this is. And when we did the election smackdown for the election week, we kind of talked about how the power of the legislature really matters, especially for LSU, with funding, with the library. There's so many things that it falls on the legislator for that. But we're going to take a quick music break, and we have some more news right after this.
That was a...
This is 91.1 KLSU in Baton Rouge, and this is the news show. So recently, I don't know if y'all have seen the menthol cigarette ban that was in the news last year also, because Biden proposed it, but the FDA has announced a plan to ban the sale of menthol cigarettes. Menthol cigarettes make up about 1/3 of the $80 billion U.S. cigarette market, and about 18.5 million Americans smoke them. And so the thing with that is, that's news, but that isn't really what we want to talk about. It's kind of the framing of it. We're both mass communication majors, and we're taught usually to look at how news stories are framed and what they're talking about. If you haven't seen these, when we were doing research this morning, most of the stories talk about black people when they talk about menthol cigarettes. So there's the headline will say, the ban on menthol cigarettes has split the black community, or they'll say, there's this issue within the black community because of menthol cigarettes. And when a story is framed like that, it kind of makes it into a one race issue. And there's been a lot of framing where it's just there might be issues in law when you ban these menthol cigarettes because people are going through withdrawals and everything. But when we were going to do a regular news story, but it doesn't feel like one. The FDA may ban, but I feel like the bigger story there is who this story is centered towards.
Mm-hmm. And also, you have written down here, black men have the highest rate of lung cancer in the U.S. population. And the issue is, medical racism is a thing. It's a proven, it's been researched, it's been proven that doctors in hospitals, in, family care practices, like on record, don't believe black people, black women, black men as much as they believe what the white population. And it's because, they think they're seeking drugs, or they think, mainly because of drug seeking behaviors, they think it's that.
Or just not paying, because there's a lot of, mom's a nurse, for those who don't know, but there's, when she was reading through her books, a lot of it will say that black people have a higher pain tolerance, or they have thicker skin, but that all comes from pseudoscience. And that was like firmly believed until about like the 60s, all of those things. So it has been a very short period of time from when this was a widely accepted belief. But with menthol cigarettes, for the history of it, they were originally marketed for to the black community for the taste. So menthol is a mint flavor that's made in a lab to make it easier to smoke, for smoking to taste better. And so 85% of black smokers smoke menthols, and that is because of the marketing towards it. For those who don't know, it's like Hennessy. Hennessy marketed to black people because black people drink the most, and they donated to everything like that, And even though it is still alcohol, it was marketed there, and that's why you see a lot of black people drink Hennessy. With menthols, it was marketed in the black community, and that's why you see that. There's nothing that says that menthol smoking is worse for you than regular cigarettes. But a lot of this has, in the stories writing about this ban, they've talked about how this move is like a form of, not reparations, but it is a form to fix the past transgressions against the black community. And so, but to put banning menthol as okay, we're trying to fix our wrongs for the black community, that kind of alienates all of the other people who also smoke menthols. There's been a steady decline in the amount of people that smoke menthols, smoke cigarettes, period, since the 2000s. But 2020, because of the pandemic, there was a small upkick. But with this, it does kind of place it on the side of, what about these other people who are also smoking menthol cigarettes?
It does. I will say, like, sometimes we go into the office and we're like, what are the stories that y'all think we should talk about this week? And immediately, like, people were like, oh, the menthol cigarette ban.
Mm-hmm.
So, everyone is going to be affected by it.
Absolutely.
Not everyone, but people who smoke cigarettes are going to be affected by it.
Yeah, and like even on Twitter, there's been so many, there's like, how dare they ban menthol 100s? Like people's cigarettes, you pick a cigarette usually, and that's the one that you smoke. And so with this, there are going to be a bunch of people who are like, okay, they've taken this away. And it is an addiction, So with this, it's not just something that can be taken very lightly. You have to know about the time period. People might be buying in bulk, It's all these things really reflect back on each other. But I think we want to really drive home the point from this of like, when you are reading about stories, especially with public health and things of that nature, you have to be careful about who they say this is tailored for, who it isn't tailored for, and what the response of that is. Because that all goes into play when you're absorbing information about a story or about something that is like this, that's related to public health.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's the menthol story. But Lucia has something for us on abortion.
Yes, still going along with the sort of recap theme, after the now infamous Texas abortion ban went into effect, numerous other state governments have followed suit with similar legislation of their own. Most recently, the Oklahoma legislature approved a bill on Thursday prohibiting abortions after about 6 weeks of pregnancy, a ban that could sharply reduce abortion access not only for women in the state, but for those who have been crossing its borders to work around increasingly strict anti-abortion laws across the South. The bill is modeled after the one that took effect in Texas in September of 2021. It bans abortion after cardiac fetal activity, generally around 6 weeks of pregnancy, and requires enforcement by civilians, allowing them to sue any doctor who performs or induces the abortion, or anyone who, quotes, aids or abets one. The bill incentivizes lawsuits by offering rewards of at least $10,000 for those who are successful. The Oklahoma bill also makes the act of getting an abortion, or giving one, a felony punishable by up to 10 years in prison. In Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis signed into law a ban on most abortions after 15 weeks of pregnancy, severely restricting access to the procedure in a state that has also been a refuge for women across the South. The new law, which takes effect on July 1st, is modeled after a similar abortion ban in Mississippi that the U.S. Supreme Court appears set to uphold. It contains exceptions only in cases where an abortion is necessary to save the life of the mother or prevent serious injury, or if the fetus has a fatal abnormality. At that same week, lawmakers in Kentucky overturned the governor's veto of a measure restricting abortions after 15 weeks and prohibiting providers from offering abortions until they can meet certain requirements. The Kentucky law was temporarily blocked by a federal judge on April 21st. Similar with the transgender athlete ban, we see this legislation growing and spreading and spreading and spreading
It's
every
about
week.
like 41 states now, isn't it?
I believe so. Yes.
Yeah, 41 states have some type of abortion bill that copies Texas and the other ones. They kind of all copy each other. With Kentucky, I did a news update on that earlier this week. But the reason that the judge blocked it was because there was 2 clinics where women could go in the whole state to get an abortion. And with the restrictions that they put up, the clinics would not be able to uphold to those restrictions, so they would have to close. And so that is the reason that the law was blocked.
Yes.
And I don't know about Oklahoma. I feel like it's all similar there. A lot of them are not blocked, but with Texas, the way that they went privately, that is why it hasn't been blocked by the Supreme Court or anything like that, because they did it in a very clear way to be like, this is not the state taking action against people, this is private businesses doing this.
I would also like to add that not quite at the same rate or the same growth, but other states, particularly in the South, but other states are also reinforcing their openness to abortion. Connecticut, namely, is looking to expand their abortion rights in response to out-of-state restrictions, but it is not at the same rate that other states are cracking down on the freedom to it.
Yeah, we've done some updates throughout this week of states who are ensuring that people can go and get this abortion. A lot of these laws spread. That's just how things work in legislation. You see it in one place, so you see it everywhere else. That's kind of like the Don't Say Gay bills in Florida. They spread like that, but we'll continue to see this. Sadly, this is going to be our last update on it this semester, but I'm sure that there's going to be more news to report once we get back. We're going to take one more break before we come in, show y'all the last of our stories, and close out the show. One song.
All right, and welcome back. We got one last story for y'all, also concerning national news. The death penalty has been in the news for multiple reasons lately. Melissa Lucio was the first Hispanic woman to be sentenced to death in Texas. She was arrested for the murder of her 2-year-old daughter, Mariah, in 2007. The 53-year-old was sentenced to be executed by lethal injection on April 27th, but the highest court in Texas, the Court of Criminal Appeals, granted her a stay of execution. Her case now heads to a lower court for a hearing which will consider new evidence in the case. If Lucio's execution would have taken place, she'd be the first Latina in the U.S. to be killed in such a manner since the death penalty was reinstated in 1976. Police arrested Lucio just 2 hours after her daughter's death. She had faced an interrogation in which her lawyers said, quote, "Armed male police officers stood over her, yelled at her, threatened her, berated her parenting, and repeatedly refused to accept anything less than an admission to causing her daughter's death. As a victim of sexual abuse and domestic violence, they said she was particularly vulnerable to law enforcement's aggressive interrogation tactics. Lucio was convicted of beating her daughter to death, partly based on statements she made during this interrogation. In other recent news, South Carolina's highest court issued a temporary stay in April, blocking the state from carrying out what was set to be its first ever firing squad execution. The order by the state Supreme Court puts on hold temporarily the planned April 29th execution of Richard Bernard Moore, who drew the death sentence for the 1999 killing of convenience store clerk James Mahoney in Spartanburg. Moore has been on death row for 20 years and chose the execution by firing squad over the electric chair in a statement calling both practices, quote, unconstitutional. The court said while issuing the temporary stay that it would release a more detailed order later. It has been over a decade since the last firing squad execution in the U.S. The state of Utah carried out all 3 such executions in the nation since 1976, according to the Washington-based nonprofit Death Penalty Information Center. The most recent was in 2010 when Ronnie Lee Gardner faced a 5-person squad. The death penalty is a very nuanced and a very controversial discussion.
It's been talked about. This might not be believable, but for some reason, these last 2 weeks, I think it's because of Lucia, the death penalty has been discussed every day.
I think it is because of me.
I think it is. I don't think anybody else is bringing it up, but it is something that is very topical, very controversial, definitely. I had to tell Lucia today that she can't, Lucia loves to.
Sometimes I toe the line.
She does like to toe the line
with
sometimes.
my opinions. I will just say, though, I think it's particularly topical because of, what we talked about this whole semester with state police, with our trust in the state systems and our trust in the people who are running the state. And those are the people who are killing people through procedures.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Lucia.
That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, that's all she's going to say. We're going to close out the show for this semester. I don't know, it's been so much fun doing this, coming on this station every week to, tell you all about what's going on in the world, and I hope that you've learned something over these past couple months. I want to thank Jayden, Bowman, Jasmine, Yana, who else is coming on the show? Dominic Purdy, so many people, Ugo, everybody who's ever come on this show. Thank you so much for this whole year, and we'll be back in August. It's 91.1 KLSU. Y'all enjoy y'all weekend.
Yeah.
Oh.